Welcome to Shatter.
She looked at me across the restaurant table, barely swallowing her wine, and said it again. You're just not like my ex. He was a real man. Then she laughed, like it was a harmless joke, like it didn't matter that I had just paid for her meal, with the last $48 in my account, and 2 weeks left in the month. She didn't say it with anger. She said it with that soft, effortless cruelty that only people who think you won't leave ever learn to perfect. I smiled, not because it was funny, but because something in me, something old and quiet, just snapped. That night, she kissed me like nothing had happened. Same routine, same line. You're sweet. I just wish you had more drive. I held her, let her sleep. Then I got up at 3 a.m., opened my laptop, and started building, not to prove anything to her, but because I knew I was never going to be enough for a woman who saw value only in status. We weren't poor, but I wasn't flashy. She hated that. Every outfit she wore was a performance. Every brunch with friends was a stage. And I was the guy in a plain shirt who brought peace instead of prizes. She wanted noise. She wanted attention. So she'd drop it into conversations like poison. My ex used to take me to Bali. He bought me a car after 3 months. You're great, babe. But he just had presence. I never snapped, never yelled, just watched, counted, remembered, and quietly stopped sharing my vision with her. Because how do you dream with someone who mocks your hunger? Because it doesn't glitter yet? She thought I was weak, too passive, too stable, but she never noticed that the most dangerous men are the quiet ones taking notes, while you think they're not paying attention. By the end of that month, I had mapped out a new plan, new skills, new offer, new drive. Every time she dropped another line about her ex, I just nodded and stayed up later that night. She didn't know I was building something. She'd never get to enter. She thought I was grinding for her, but I was building past her. And when I was done, she'd be nothing more than a reminder of who I'll never chase again. She started noticing the shift. I wasn't begging for attention anymore. Wasn't asking if she wanted to hang out. Didn't check in during her long girls' nights. I stayed at my laptop, eyes on the screen, mind out of her reach. She'd walk by in her little dresses, drop comments like, "Wow, still working? Guess dinner's on me again." I'd nod, smile, keep typing. Because now, I wasn't trying to impress her. I was trying to outgrow her. She wanted a lifestyle, not a life. A man who could decorate her Instagram feed, not a partner to build with. And me? I was done auditioning. The more serious I got, the more bored she became. She started comparing more openly now. Her friend's fiancé bought a house. Her cousin's boyfriend drove a Tesla. And I was still in the same 2-bedroom apartment, still fixing the leaky sink on Sundays. She didn't see what I saw, that every hour I spent at that desk was adding one more brick to a life without her. She once came into the room, frustrated. "You're always in your own world." I replied without looking up. "That's because I'm building one." She didn't know what to say, so she laughed again. That same fake, patronizing tone. The one that said, "Cute, but not serious." But I was serious, more than I'd ever been in my life. Because now, every jab she threw was just fuel. She was my motivation. Not because I wanted her approval, but because I wanted distance. She started asking more questions. "Why are you suddenly learning sales? What's with all these calls? Who's this client? You don't even have a company yet." I just said, "Not yet." The truth was, I didn't need her to believe in me anymore, because I'd already stopped including her in the plan. The moment she mocked my effort, she removed herself from the reward. It was subtle at first, the way she asked what I was doing on Saturday. But in that voice that wasn't curiosity, it was insecurity in disguise. I told her I had a meeting. She blinked. "On a weekend?" I nodded. Didn't offer details. She didn't deserve them anymore. Her tone shifted after that. No more digs about my hustle. No more, "He wasn't like my ex." Instead, she started orbiting again, lingering in doorways, bringing me snacks like she used to, asking, "Need anything?" with just a little too much hope. But I didn't, because I'd already built the version of myself that didn't require her validation to move forward. And now, she felt it, the tilt in the room, the way gravity was shifting, and she was no longer the center of it. She posted less, stopped tagging me, went quiet on socials. I wasn't watching, but her friend, Olivia, was. Olivia told me. She's acting weird, like she's trying to prove something to herself. I said nothing, because when you start building in silence, your silence becomes louder than her entire performance. She asked to go on a trip. Something spontaneous. Some resort with a spa. I said I had deadlines. She got quiet, then snapped. You're so obsessed with your little dream, you don't even see what you're losing. I looked at her. Calm. Focused. I see it. That's why I'm not stopping. She stormed out of the room. I didn't follow. Because once a man starts creating something from scratch, he stops chasing someone who just wants the end result, not the grind that built it. She didn't want to grow with me. She wanted to show off the version of me she never helped build. And that's when I knew it. She wouldn't survive the future I was walking toward. The day the first real money hit my account, she didn't know. She thought I was still trying, still getting there, still stuck on potential. But the brand was live. The system was automated. The payments were rolling in. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like a man trying to prove his worth. I felt like a man who no longer needed her recognition. She came home with shopping bags, new shoes, a new scent she claimed made her feel expensive. I just smiled, let her talk, watch her perform, and silently noted. She was still acting like I was behind her, but I wasn't. I had already passed her. She just hadn't looked around yet. That week, I upgraded my laptop, booked a table at a private founders event downtown, bought a tailored blazer and wore it. Without saying a word, she noticed. Where are you going dressed like that? Meeting, I said. With who? People who don't measure value by who someone used to date. She didn't answer, didn't follow up, but I saw the change in her posture, the little drop in her chin, the pause before speaking, the first tiny crack, in a woman who thought I'd never have options. At dinner she asked, "Are we okay?" I looked at her. Steady, quiet. We're in the same room. That's all. She nodded. Didn't eat much after that. By Friday, she was texting more, sending old photos, calling me babe like she used to. But it sounded like a question now, not a nickname, because for the first time, she could feel it. I wasn't asking to be loved. I was choosing what to take with me, and she was no longer a guarantee. When the business passed 5 figures in a week, I didn't celebrate with her. I called my mentor, took my brother to dinner, upgraded my phone. And when she asked why I was suddenly so quiet, I said, because I'm finally listening to the version of me you never respected. She didn't speak, just sat there, small, in a room that used to belong to her. And now? Now she was just visiting. She started waking up earlier, asking if I wanted coffee, mentioning old memories like they were keys to a door she hadn't knocked on in months. I miss how we used to laugh. I was just stressed, you know? That's why I said those things. But here's the thing. When someone throws knives at your ribs, they don't get to come back later and ask if you still want to dance. She didn't apologize. Not really. She reframed. She rewrote. She softened the edges of all the things she used to say, as if I hadn't heard them at full volume. With her back turned to me, I had started spending more time out. Events, dinners, quiet meetups with people who respected what I was building, even when it wasn't flashy. And she hated it, not because she missed me, but because she wasn't included. She had been the narrator of our story. Now, she was barely a footnote. I caught her staring at my phone once, then closing it fast when I walked into the room. Jealousy, suspicion, that familiar storm brewing in her expression. But the irony? There was no one else. I wasn't cheating. I was just unavailable. Emotionally, mentally, spiritually. She hadn't lost me to another woman. She'd lost me to who I became. While she was laughing, that weekend, she planned a dinner. Candles, wine, music from a playlist we hadn't touched in years. She wore that red dress, the one from our anniversary, sat across from me. I sobbed. I know I've been distant, but I see you now. I really do. I nodded, took a bite of food, chewed slowly. You see me now because I finally walked far enough away to be visible. She blinked, twice, then looked down, and for once, she didn't try to correct the story, because she knew. She wasn't the author anymore. She used to ask questions like, "What do you want from me? Why are you so distant lately? Are you punishing me?" But by now, the questions had changed. Now she was asking, "Is there still time? Can we go back? Do you still love me?" I didn't lie. I just paused. then answered, "I don't love the version of you who looked down on me, and I don't need to meet her again." That crushed her more than any yelling ever could, because she built her identity on one thing, being the prize. But now she was standing in front of a man who didn't want to win her anymore, a man who had already won himself. She started watching me, not just watching, from the doorway, from across the couch, from behind a glass she thought still separated us. But I wasn't behind glass anymore. She was. The brand had grown. Money was steady. People respected what I was doing. And suddenly, "You're not like my ex," turned into a memory she couldn't scrub off. She tried to reframe it, posted old photos of us, used vague captions like, "People change. So can love." I didn't respond, because silence is louder when it comes from someone you were sure would never leave. She made breakfast, brought it to my desk, smiled like the early days. I said thanks. Ate. Didn't look up, because appreciation isn't affection, and kindness isn't closeness. Not anymore. That night she cried, not for sympathy, not for effect, just cried quiet, steady, the kind of crying people do when they finally feel the weight of being replaceable. And I didn't hug her, didn't speak, just sat with my laptop open, typing the next email, building the next thing. Without her, I stopped syncing my calendar with hers, turned off location sharing, changed the passcode on my phone, not to hide anything, just to reclaim what was always mine. My time, my focus, my life. She noticed. One night she stood at the edge of the doorway, arms folded. "Why are you acting like a stranger?" I didn't look up, because I finally accepted that I was never your equal, only your project. She didn't speak after that, didn't slam a door, didn't cry. She just walked away, for once, without words. A week later, I signed the lease on a private studio, not for living, for clarity, a place to work, to think, to move without being seen. She asked about it that evening. "Why didn't you tell me?" I shrugged. "Because this part of my life isn't about you." She looked stunned, not angry, just lost, because she realized she was no longer at the center of the thing I was building. She wasn't part of the blueprint. The tension turned cold. No more sarcasm. No more backhanded compliments. Only silence and distance. She still made dinners, still waited for reactions, but my chair was often empty. And when I was there, so was the gap between us. Then came the first event I didn't invite her to. A conference. Networking. A private dinner with founders and investors. She found out from a tag on social media. Someone posted a photo. I was in it, smiling, alive. She asked about it later. "So this is your life now? Without me?" I looked at her. Steady, calm. "No, this is my life now. Because of you." She didn't reply. That night, I got home late. She was curled on the couch, eyes red, blanket pulled tight. She didn't ask where I'd been, didn't accuse, didn't pretend, because she knew. I wasn't cheating. I was evolving, and she couldn't follow. She started trying again, but not out of love, out of fear. Fear that the version of me she used to overlook was now someone she could no longer reach. She brought up couples therapy, said we could start fresh, talked about booking a trip. Just us two, no distractions. I told her I had work, and I meant it, because peace wasn't something I needed to schedule anymore. I had built it from scratch. She cleaned more, cooked more, smiled more, but I didn't ask for any of it, didn't praise it, didn't need it. Because when someone only respects your grind, after the gold starts showing, they were never with you. They were with the idea of reward. And now, she was late to the result. She never helped create. One night she said it straight. "I miss how safe I used to feel with you." I looked at her, carefully, and I miss being respected by the person I chose to protect. Silence. Not the cold kind. The kind that lives between two people, who both know it's over, but only one is ready to say it. The next day, she asked if I still saw a future together. I didn't hesitate. I did. But then I realized I was building it alone. She cried. But it wasn't grief. It was recognition. Recognition that the man she used to mock had quietly become someone she no longer had power over. The mask cracked. No more pretending to be in control. No more pedestal. No more comparing me to her ex. Because now, she wasn't above me. She was watching me from below. And that realization, that she didn't just lose her man, but lost a good one, eh? That broke her more than any betrayal ever could. There was no fight, no slammed doors, no dramatic speeches, just a slow removal of my presence. I took my books from the shelf, my files from the drawer, canceled joint subscriptions, opened a separate account. Every step quiet, deliberate, unapologetic. She started noticing. Noticed the missing hoodie, the half-empty closet, the silence that stretched longer every day. She asked me once, "Are you planning something?" I looked at her for a second longer than usual, then went back to tying my shoes. She didn't press, because she already knew. I had dinner with an investor that night. Signed a deal. Nothing wild, just 6 figures, clean, scalable. When I came home, she was sitting on the floor. Wine glass, dim light, old hoodie of mine pulled over her knees. She looked up. "Do you still want this?" I sat on the edge of the couch, looked her in the eyes. "I used to want a future with you. Now I just want peace." She nodded. Didn't fight. Didn't beg. Because she saw it. The final version of me. The one she never believed would arrive. That weekend I signed a lease. Simple place. Clean. Quiet. I didn't tell her. Just packed one suitcase and left early Sunday morning. Left my key on the kitchen table. No note. No goodbye. Because I wasn't making a point. I was making a choice. And for the first time in years, I felt light. No more performance. No more resentment. No more pretending not to notice the weight she put on my back. Every time she compared me to someone I never wanted to be. She called that night. I let it ring. Then again the next morning. Texted. "Just tell me why." I didn't reply. Because if she needed an explanation now. After everything. She was never really listening. She didn't show up screaming. Didn't beg at the door. Didn't fall apart in public. People like her don't crumble out loud. They fracture in silence. Behind closed blinds. Scrolling through old photos. They thought they'd never need again. She posted a picture 2 weeks later. Us, smiling. Caption. Sometimes we realize too late what we already had. I didn't react. Didn't like it. Didn't even flinch. Because when you've climbed out of a cage, you don't go back to admire the lock. I heard she asked around. Mutual friends. Old connections. Even Olivia. Trying to find out how I was. Trying to see if the door was still cracked open. It wasn't. Because I hadn't just left the apartment. I'd left the dynamic. The weight. The version of me she once believed would never rise without her. She texted again. "I miss you. I'm proud of you now. Please. Just talk to me." But I didn't need pride now. Not hers. Not anyone's. Because I had rebuilt myself. In the dark. While she was busy laughing at the man she thought was stuck. And now? I wasn't stuck. I wasn't angry. I wasn't looking back. I was free. I passed by our old restaurant once. The same one where she said, "You're just not like my ex." I didn't stop. Didn't feel anything. Because that table is still there. But I'm not the man sitting at it anymore. The truth? I didn't leave to hurt her. I left to stop hurting. And the moment I realized my value didn't depend on her approval. Was the moment she lost me forever. She said, "I can't respect a man who makes less." So I made more. And left her behind.